Welcome back for another edition of Best Bet on this fine Sunday morning here in Del Mar. I am so glad to be live streaming back on track after doing it from home last weekend. Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Scattoni, and I am your host for this weekly live stream where I am joined each week by a special guest to discuss the best betting opportunities on Sunday's card. Now, I know I say this every week, but just as a reminder for those who haven't listened or watched before, it's not your traditional selection show. We're not going to talk about every race. We're just going to look at specific races and wagering strategies that offer the opportunities to make the best score. If you're watching live, feel free to leave us a comment or ask us any questions. The show will also be archived on Del Mar's Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube platforms. So without further ado, let me introduce today's special guest. He and I spent a lot of time together up in the Del Mar press box when he was out here for a while, several years back, covering Del Mar. And even though he's since relocated to Kentucky, he's still very heavily involved in SoCal racing as the expert analyst for Twin Spires during this Del Mar meet. I've always respected his handicapping acumen, love talking races with him, love his approach to wagering. Really excited to have him on today's show. Scott Shapiro, welcome. How are you, Scott?
Frank, good to be with you, man, on this. You've been doing a great job. Missed those days more than you know where we got to hang out early and often in the press box. I missed the weather. I missed the racing there. I missed the people. But like you said, I still get to keep up with the Del Mar scene in the summer. And, yeah, it's been a fantastic meet. I got to give a big tip of the cap to David Jerkins and the racing office for pulling off this meet. Nice size field, competitive racing, and looking forward to chatting with you over the next few minutes.
Yeah, well, we miss you out here, Scott, and hopefully one of these days we'll get you back here for a weekend and relive some old times. But while we're here, we got to talk about a bunch of things. I know you want to talk about the early pick 5 today and another race later in the card, some opportunities that you sniffed out. But before we do that, just give our audience a little bit of background about how you got involved in the sport, and then just kind of walk us through your career and come full circle and tell us about what you're doing now and where we can find your work.
Yeah, I got into horse racing way back in my teenage years growing up. My father wasn't an avid racing guy like us, but he was a big day racing guy that, grew up around the track in a sense in Delaware Park and Brandywine, the old racetracks in Delaware where he grew up. Took me to the racetrack. Garden State Park was constructed. It's been down for a while, but it was put up about 15 minutes from where I grew up back in the mid 80s. And my first real memory was the Jersey Derby when Spendebuck was paid to skip the Preakness after the Derby win and go right to the Jersey Derby instead. I mean, It's so crazy to think about right now, but $1 million bonus was on the line. And that's my first memory of the track. And, the Garden State Park was nearby for so many of my years. So, it was thriving sort of for a little while, and then it turned into a big OTB and spent so much time there. Moved out to Southern California on a couple different stints. But the second one was when I really got serious about making this my career after doing a couple of other things throughout my 20s and early 30s. And that's when we got to spend some time, was doing some work for Horse Racing Nation back then, and then got brought on by Twin Spires, Churchill Downs, ADW to do work from Southern California, but live out there. And got to spend about 3 years working at Del Mar and Santa Anita working on that stuff. And then was fortunate enough to have an opportunity here in Louisville. Sadly, had to leave the beautiful Southern California climate for the opportunity, but have been working for Churchill Downs, the racetrack, in addition to Twin Spires, for the last 5 years full time since I've lived here in Louisville. I guess it's a little over 5 years now. Carved out a role on the Churchill Downs simulcast feed and the Kentucky Derby feed, and it's been a true whirlwind to have made it, to be able to be a part of the Kentucky Derby and whatnot. And just very thankful for all the people out in Southern California like yourself and others that kind of helped me get to where I'm at today. And it's been a lot of fun, but I do miss you out there.
Yeah, well, we miss you too. And I know I see you do a lot of work. I know you stay busy all year round, but specifically during the Del Mar meet, you're doing stuff for the Twin Spires ADW, right? You do expert selections each race each day.
That's correct. Every for the major tracks, Twin Spires on the app and on the website offers expert pick videos. They're somewhere between 40 seconds and a minute and 20 seconds, where we got each of the experts, me in the case of the Del Mar Summer Meeting, give our top 3 picks and a little bit of detail in why. So you can get my selections on there. Very easy click, either on the app or on the website. So yeah, it's been fun doing that. And I was doing a little bit the first part of the meet, some Kentucky shippers videos, a little bit of a closer look at some of the horses that were trying to take advantage of the ship and win program that race last at Churchill Downs.
All right, so everyone go check out Scott's work on the Twin Spires app, ADW. Let's talk a little bit about handicapping. Your approach, what tools do you use? What are you looking for when you analyze a race? Give us a general walkthrough of how you handicap.
Yeah, first and foremost, I would say I'm a trip handicapper with the use of replays. That's how when I print out my PPs, I still print them out. I know it's a little archaic these days.
Really showing your age here, Scott.
When I get my PPs out, the first thing I'll do is go back and watch as many replays as I need to. A lot of times that's just going to be the most recent race for horses. Maybe if there's surface switches or going further or shorter, go back and watch some races that are a little more pertinent to the current conditions of the day. Then from there, though, I really over the last several years added some technology, some numbers to the game more than I ever have. Like you, I use Optics EQ, have for a while, use their plot specifically, along with the Timeform US pace projector. I think a good combination of the two of them kind of gives you a real good feel for how the pace is going to play out, whether it's going to be contentious and which horses may benefit from the race shape. And on top of that, I've really become an avid Thorograph user over the last 4 or 5 years. I find their numbers to be the best. I find, using, you can use some patterns to get some advantages there, and then just really have added that to my game. And I do think in the long run, it has helped me out. I used to be probably a little bit too lenient on my eye and trips, and not enough on, well, is this horse really fast enough to win?
Right.
So I think it's a pretty good combination of that. But first and foremost, trips and replays is kind of what I like to use as my primary source.
All right. So now that you've done all the work, you've figured out which races you want to get involved in. You've isolated some contenders. You found some vulnerable favorites. Now what? You put a plan for the day together. You're like, I know. We talked earlier, the place pick all is one of your favorite bets here at Del Mar. But are there other types of bets you gravitate to? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses as a gambler?
Well, I think my strength and weaknesses all come together. My strength over the years has been playing pick fives and pick fours. However, I think what I've realized after a long time is that, putting part of your budget and not all of your budget into those races or into those sequences is the way to go, because being right, singling a 9-2 and being right, and 2 vulnerable favorites don't win, and you get those 3 right, and then you spread 6 deep in a 12-horse field and you get beat and you get nothing, and you lose. I've really started to play more win wagers, some exactas, really trying to take something out of the race that I really like most that day.
Right.
Because the ups and downs of playing horizontals are just that. A lot of my years will always depend on having a couple 5-digit scores in a pick five if I'm going to be a winner for the year and not a loser. But it's that partially the mental fatigue that you get when you keep getting tough beats with the 4 out of 5s, combining with just wasting good opinion. So I really tried to separate my budget into, some into the pick fives or pick fours, depending on the day. Of course, the place all, which is unique to Del Mar, at least in my life. And then, trying to take some things out of the race. So as we'll talk about in a little bit, kind of did a little of both for the suggested wagering opportunities today.
Yeah, I like it. We're going to go through the early pick five, but then you also have an opinion in a race later in the card where you like an 8-1 shot. And yeah, you want to make sure you're taking money out of that specific race and not having it blow up 2 races later, when something crazy happens. So I like that approach. Anything, I know you watch the races diligently, Del Mar, all summer long. Anything that you've noticed, any trends or anything that we could take for the last couple of weeks that might help us going forward?
Yeah, I'm curious as your thoughts on this, but with the turf course, the rails out and the rails are not out, it's always been a major angle at Del Mar. You should always be cognizant of it at any track. But at Del Mar, it really feels like it plays a major difference. You just look to, opening week when the course was fresh, the rails were in, and, it seemed like wiring out a field was nearly impossible.
Difficult, yes.
It was just a matter of, like a European race almost, the final kick, and these horses that had the ability to have a strong turn of foot were at their best. Then you bring the rails out and, you need to be on the lead or saving ground or up close most of the time. And now that we've gotten 12 feet this week, it seems like it's back to mostly wanting to be coming from off the pace. So that's something to keep an eye out on. Are you seeing the same thing as we always have? I know you pointed out some stuff, about the rail being in a lot of the turf sprints, I think, but do you still see the same trends we talked about in the years past?
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I think the turf course has been a little more kind to speed than it had been in years past. But to me, we're dealing with big full fields. A lot of it's becoming jockey races now, right? You see who's winning the turf races: Rispoli, Barrios, like guys who know how to save ground, who know how to judge pace. So yeah, I think if the rails are out, you do want to be more forwardly placed, and you definitely want to save ground. You don't want that. You don't want that 3-4 wide stalking trip that works on the dirt.
Right. Exact opposite,
that's
right.
the kiss of death on the turf course. If what looks like a perfect trip on the dirt, if you have that on the turf, your horse is not going to find the final eighth of a mile. So I'm all about horses who are going to be able to tuck in, save ground, maybe race covered up a little bit, and then I get a little stubborn sometimes. I hate betting front runners on the turf. I'm always looking for the horse with the best closing kick in the race. So I get a little stubborn. But when the rails are out, I do move a little bit, and I will look for horses who are going to get that good forwardly placed trip while saving ground. And then on the dirt course, I think the last 2 weeks have been a lot more fair. But early in the meet, we just saw, like, if you were inside, no chance. You had to have that 3-4 wide stalking trip, especially in the sprint races. But I think it's been a little more fair, but mostly because the jocks have cottoned on to the fact that the rail was dead, and they're all racing in the 3 and 4 path. Horses make the lead and they're staying outside. So
right, yeah, I noticed the same. I mean, particularly the Bing Crosby day, I thought was the high point of the outside, needing to be outside and a little bit off the pace. The day American Theorem won,
the 8 and the 9, right? American Theorem and the Peter Miller horse.
Exact, get her number, and even the third place finisher, Let's Get Lucky, at the same trip. I think that's the coroner horse that ran yesterday and just missed it. Yeah, but you're right. I do think it's been a little fair. We've seen some inside rider jobs over the last. I remember a horse that knocked me out of the pick 5 yesterday. The one horse in the second race, name escapes me, a Calbred maiden claimer. But yeah, I guess we're seeing basically the same trends. And I would agree, I guess it hasn't been as stark of a contrast with the rails in and rails out.
Yeah, and so just going forward, looking for people out there who are looking at the last couple of weeks of the meet, any horse who ran the first 2 or 3 weeks of the meet, you saw they broke from the 1 or 2 post in a dirt sprint, and now they're drawn, 8 or 9 more favorably. And even though they lost but still ran well, you might want to think about betting them back. Any jocks, any jocks or trainers that are kind of on your radar for the last couple of weeks, who was cold and you think might heat up, that kind of thing?
Well, first, I'm glad we didn't record this yesterday, because I would have thought the Funded was the perfect example of a horse, or I did think that the Funded was a perfect example of a horse that was along the inside and on the lead in a race where you wanted to be on the outside and off the pace. And that was the case for him in the San Diego. I thought he was going to ride huge yesterday.
Yeah, he just found nothing. It was very disappointing. I liked it too yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my bigger plays of the meet, and that was not very enjoyable, to say the least. In terms of a trainer, we might talk about him here in a minute, but, Jeff Mullins was a guy that really was struggling in the early part of the meet and really has picked things up of late. In fact, he's won 5 of his last 13. He's hit the board in 8 of those 13 tries and really seems to be firing on all cylinders. Mark Glad, another guy, he had a little bit, he had like a 1 1.5 week stint where it felt like he was going to get scorching hot like he did
Right.
last summer.
Yeah.
But he got off to the slow start and it's been a little chilly. I wouldn't be surprised if he heats up a little bit. And I mean, you got to mention George Papadromo. I mean, he's cooled off a tiny bit, but
But
not really. What a meet it's been for him. A huge breakthrough meet for George.
yeah. All right. Well, those are some names to watch out for. We're going to start into the races, but just really quick, we have a comment. Can you explain what a place all bet is?
Love to. In fact, I wish I got to talk about it year round because it's a bet that saved me this meet and has been very good to me over the years. But the place pick all bet is every race of the day, or if it's an 11 or more race card at Del Mar, they go to just the last 10 races. And instead of picking the winner in every race like you would in a pick 5 or a pick 4, you're trying to find a horse that finishes first or second. So there's lots of different ways to attack it, but in the end, if you can beat a couple of favorites within a 10 race, 9 race sequence and get everything right from there, they pay a lot more than you think. And the pools are not anywhere near the horizontal pools that we're used to in California. So, if you have something crazy, you're not going to scoop as much, but generally it's a little easier to get kind of a bigger score without being absolutely crazy with the results.
And Scott's being a little modest there because he has scooped some pools before. So it's always nice when you can take the whole pool down with your place pick all wager. And I know that's something that Scott plays every day, and you guys should too out there. And it's a great bet. I think Del Mar is the only track that has it. I don't know of it anywhere else.
I don't play Hawthorne, but I think Hawthorne has it. I was told.
Okay.
But yeah, in terms of what I go through each day, there's no track I play even once a year, unless it's a spot play here or there that has the place all other than Del Mar. So I think it's a great wager. It takes a little bit of a different game theory type approach in my opinion, in deciding, which favorites you're going to use, what you can take a chance against. And you could use as many horses as you want in each race, just like a pick 5 or pick 4 or single all the way across. So you can play a $1 or $2 ticket, or I usually play about a $24 to $36 ticket each day.
Yeah, and you can hit it multiple times because if you use 2 horses in a race and they run 1-2, you're alive to both those horses going forward. So yeah, it's a great bet. Well, let's dig in and let's talk about this early pick 5. I'm going to put up some numbers for race 1, but it's a Calbred maiden special weight for 2-year-old fillies going a mile on the lawn. The rails are at 12 feet, as we talked about. Morning line favorite is number 3, Warren's Paradise. She was 9-5 at this level in distance last time. She ran on late to get third. It was her first try around 2 turns. She figures to improve with that experience and with the jock switch to Hernandez, but there are others in here who figure to improve as well. I think she's obvious, but I wouldn't necessarily trust her to get the job done. What do you think, Scott?
I could see adding her onto my ticket defensively if you want. She does get a nice rider upgrade to leading jockey Ron Hernandez, and as you mentioned, it is her second time, but she has no early speed, and I just think she might get a little bit over bet off of that last effort. Now, Loyal to a Fault beat her last time. That was a horse that debuted at Churchill, raced once over the main track, and got a really good stalking trip. I expect Loyal to a Fault, though, to get the jump on her again, which should benefit her. So I did include Loyal to a Fault. Other than that, I used 3 horses that were not out of that August 12th race where number 1 Cherry Chaos is out of as well. I didn't think it was the strongest race for the level. We'll see if this one is any stronger with the additions here. But I actually picked a 20-1 shot here, number 4, Quickly Park It, who I thought finished pretty well. The dam is ahead in the debut effort after a slow break. The dam is a half to Quick Enough, who won 5 of 18 on the turf and earned over $300,000. So there was some pedigree there to go to. But I also included number 5, Graze My Heart, for the aforementioned Jeff Mullins. This one's a half to Dendera, who we maybe are familiar with here in Southern California. Is 2 for 6, both of the wins on the grass, I believe, for John Sadler. And then a wild card at number 2, Serenade, a second-time starter, stretches out to 2 turns, tries the turf for the first time for Carla Gaines, who's at a pretty good meet.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting race to get a little spread in and try and beat a couple of horses who are going to take some money. How important is it to you to start off a sequence beating the favorite? Do you think there's extra juice involved if a lot of people are getting knocked out in the first leg of the pick 5?
It's a good question. I think each sequence is different. I think, I'm willing to single a favorite in the first leg of a sequence. I kind of treat each sequence differently, but if you can find a way to beat a favorite, because the one thing that I do think about is that I think there's people out there that like to spread in the last race and like to spread in the first race.
Right. Yeah.
If they get to the payouts, they want to have as many chances as possible,
Yep.
and they don't want to lose the wager in the first leg. I don't really subscribe to any of those theories. But
I agree with you.
yeah, but when you're creating your tickets, you kind of want to keep maybe the game theory part of it in mind, because if you can be contrarian in your construction, your 2-1 might be more valuable than somebody else's 2-1 in a different leg. So
right, if the race looks spready and everybody's in a spread, single, right?
exactly,
Everybody else is wasting money on all those other combinations, and if you happen to be right, then you have the advantage going forward, where you can use more horses when other people are a lot tighter.
100%. I mean, if you have a 3-1 in a 12-horse field where everybody's between 3-1 and 18-1, and that 3 to like a 5-1 in the sequence, because everybody's gone 4 deep or more, or 3 deep. If you have a 3-1 in a 4-horse field where there's a 1-5, a 3-1, and 2 20-1s, a lot of people are going to single the 1-5, but then the next logical move is to go 2 deep, and everybody, that 3-1 might play more like a 3-1 or even a 5-2 or something.
Right. Okay. Well, 2, 4, 5, 6 in race 1 to kick off the pick 5. We're going to move to race 2, where Scott it looks like he has a single here. It's an open 10K claimer, contested at 6 furlongs on the main track. Morning line favorite is a 9-year-old, number 2 Bear Chum, 2-1. He's been running respectably against slightly better claimers. He takes a drop to the 10K level today. He makes sense, but I thought he was very unexciting, and I actually like the horse that you landed on too, Scott, and I think that's a good single in the sequence. Tell us about Stay Happy.
Yeah, Stay Happy, first off the claim for Mark Gatto, I mentioned, I think has probably another little surge in him here over the last few weeks of the meet. He claimed this one personally. He's the owner as well for 12-5 at Los Alamitos on July 3rd in one of their day races there. And pretty excusable effort for breaking from the rail. Never really, in my opinion, the place to be at Los Alamitos. Had a little bit of a tricky trip. Should have run better. But what I like most is that Glatt has decided to freshen this son of Oxbow up, give him some time, get him a couple of local drills. And now I think he finds a very favorable spot. And it doesn't take too much looking to find many races on this one's recent page that would be good enough, at least in my opinion, to win this race, especially if number 1 Cajun Brother doesn't fire back to any of his big shots, because he's a little bit of a wild card here on a major class drop. That's but Stay Happy loves to win races. He's 7 for 19 in his career. I think there's a lot of positive changes here, including the freshening, which I think he needed.
So that's a great on the pick 5. And Scott and I were joking earlier before we got on the air that we're joking that if we miss the first leg of the early pick 5, come back early pick 4, start off with a single, trying to beat the morning line favorites. So, all right, that's number 4, Stay Happy. Let's move on to race 3. It's a Cal Red maiden special weight for fillies and mares, going 5 furlongs on the turf with the rails at 12 feet. Morning line favorite is a tepid 7-2, number 10 Brazen Touch, just ran second at this level in distance last time at 3-1, but she had the 3-hole that day, and now she's drawn all the way outside. I wouldn't be in such a hurry to take. I mean, she's obvious, but I wouldn't be in a hurry to take a short number on her. I thought this was a spready race. I thought there were several who could win, and it looks like you kind of see it the same way.
I agree. The 10 was kind of a defensive use. I'm going to be taking kind of a shot toward in the back leg. We're playing against the favorite in the first leg, and I thought Brazen Touch could win the race.
Sure.
But there's 2 horses I picked ahead, and I could see using even more than the 4 horses that we have up there on the screen. I did pick Eponema Girl, kind of a stabby 15-1 favorite, but Carla Gaines, the trainer, has good numbers. First turf, 96 start sample size, 20%, 240 ROI. And there's some pedigree here, albeit she's a half to Awesome Jerry, $325,000 earner for Safi Joseph. Now, the wins are all on dirt, so the turf is a question mark. But 5 furlong turf races and turf sprints in general, I'm not overly concerned about, turf pedigree there. I just like to see some productivity in the family. It's not like a 2-turn race where I think a specific hoof is really advantageous. So I took a shot, and then there's a horse that I like quite a bit as well that I think you like, and that's number 5, Good Buju. First off the claim for, again, that aforementioned Jeff Mullins, who gives this horse time off the claim, takes off the blinkers, and moves to the turf. So it feels like he had a plan with claiming this horse. And and I'll let you chime in on this one. But I also like Hector Berrios, who you mentioned, coming aboard here. And what a tremendous job he's done out there on the turf thus far this summer.
Yeah, he's had a great meet. Very happy for him and for his agent. Super nice guys. Yeah, I liked the 5 a little bit. I thought it was sneaky. I like when a smart trainer watches a horse's debut race and sees something. Said, okay, and that horse ran pretty well in the debut, 5.5 furlongs on the dirt. So the horse comes in for start number 2, and Mullins decides to take the horse for 50. And my screen froze here, but I think I have a note. Hold on. I think there were multiple claims. Yeah, there were 2 claims in that day. So somebody else saw something too. So I like when a good trainer does that. Gives the horse a little bit of time, tries to figure things out, makes an equipment change, makes a surface change, and brings the horse up in class protected. So 8-1 morning line. Maybe the horse is a maiden claimer. We'll find out today whether the horse is good enough to win a special weight. But you mentioned Mullins is heating up. Very good horseman. He knows how to spot him. So I think that's a race you could probably get a price in there. If one of your horses come in, you'd be sitting real pretty the rest of the way, because I know you're a little spready here too. So let's move on to race 4. Calbred maiden special weight, contested at 5.5 furlongs on the main track. Several of these exit the same race, and I know you want to talk a little bit about that, Scott, including the morning line favorite, number 10, Leia's Candy at 5-2. He had some trouble in the race, still finished third. He now moves from the inside, which wasn't the greatest that day, all the way to the outside, much more favorable post. He's going to get a really good trip. We talked about Glatt maybe heating up, blinkers go on. I think he's a legitimate contender, but I thought there were some others in here that you could talk about as well.
Without question, and that is the August 7th race you mentioned. It was at 6 panels. They're cutting back to 5.5 today. And the winner of that race was Thornhouse, a very good-looking winner for Dean Pedersen, who doesn't start a lot of horses. And I know DRF Jay Privman has been tweeting about it a little bit. But, man, this guy can train and probably deserves to have more horses than he has. But that horse was very impressive that day. The horse that stalked Thornhouse that day is American Cat, who's the 3 horse in here. Same barn. Took a little bit of live support that day, considering how much Thornhouse got bet. I think Thornhouse ended up going off at 4-5 or even money that day.
Big favorite that day,
Yeah. And American Cat didn't run poorly that day. Good work, it looks like, since then. August 22nd, 4 furlongs and 47-3 to prepare for this second start. I think American Cat is one of the likelier winners. Obviously, you mentioned 10 Leia's Candy, who should get the right trip, has some races to go back to. But the interesting horse to me, and the one I picked on top, was number 1, Magnificent Ride. Brutal trip last time out. Broke slowly and made a monster middle move, very wide. Now, the wide move is better at Del Mar than it is at a lot of places. But when you break slow and kind of rush up into this big middle move, you're going to tire, understandably, in most cases, especially chasing or running after a good horse at Thornhouse. And that's what happened with Magnificent Ride. Now, the rail, not ideal at Del Mar on the dirt races in general, and especially not for a horse that broke bad last time. But the braking hasn't really been an issue if you look at the past performances. So I'm hoping Joe Bravo can get a better break and can kind of tuck into a nice second tier spot. And I think Magnificent Ride should be able to outrun those 8-1 odds, although I'm sure a lot of people these days, like myself, watch the replays and we'll see the trip. So we'll probably get more like 4-1.
Well, going back to you talked about your Jersey days earlier in the seminar here. How about Jersey Joe Bravo? What a resurgent meet he's had. He's doing really well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember at the beginning of the Garden days in Monmouth, it used to be Joe Bravo and Aaron Greider were two leading riders. They both found their way out to California at one point or another. But yeah, Bravo, another guy that you like to lean on, especially in these turf races, because he's going to give you the right trip and understands saving ground is an important part of it. But he can win races on both surfaces. He's clicking it over 20% for the meet.
Yeah, he's having a really good meet, and he's been winning at prices.
Right.
Bringing home some prices. So there you go, 1, 3, 7, 10 in race 4. Let's move to the 5th to close out the early pick 5. 50K starter allowance. Non-winners of 2 lifetime for fillies and mares going 5 furlongs on the turf. Again, the rails are at 12 feet today. Morning line favorite, number 4, Dazed Delight at 5-2. She always seems to run well, but she has a tendency to settle for the minor awards. She just lost last time as the 7-5 favorite with no visible excuses. She's cutting back in distance from 1 mile. They're going to try her in a turf sprint today. She could win, but I feel like I've seen this movie before. I'm a little tired of her act. It's because she really had no excuse last time. So.
No, she's had little excuses in a lot of these starts, and then the 5 furlongs. I'd be a little bit more fan of this cutback if it was 6.5 at Santa Anita or something like that. But 5 feels pretty sharp now. She's likely to hit the board. I don't think this is the strongest bunch of starter allowance foes that she encounters. But I just can't expect her to really win, and maybe she will win, but it'll probably be at 9-5 without me.
Right.
Now I have 2 horses up there, as you see, in the 7 or 10, but I think, if you have a bigger bankroll or if you have more conviction in one of the other legs, using more would be advantageous. I decided to use a couple of, fresh faces, if you will, to this kind of level. In number 7, Flame Magoon, and number 10, 27 Trout. Flame Magoon tries the turf for the first time. I know Optics EQ notes that Emily Gullickson has the turf question mark, meaning she thinks that maybe this one has a turf hoof, which was good to see. I think this one ran pretty well last time. I think it's encouraging that the daughter of Stanford finally puts back-to-back races together, has struggled to do that throughout her career. The blinkers go on. I think there's a lot of speed in here, Frank. But I think this horse is I don't think this horse is fast enough to make the lead in a 5 furlong turf sprint. So that'll kind of force the hand. And hopefully that's the plan out of the gate from kind of that mid-tier post to settle.
There's that trainer Mark Ladd again. So if he has a good day,
Ladd and Mullins, baby. Ladd and Mullins. And then the wild card is number 10, 27 Trout, who I'm hoping doesn't get caught up in that speed duel, which could ensue. But I found it interesting that this horse not only retains the services of Juan Hernandez. The last time this horse raced was March of last year. Yeah. So for Wanda, I don't know what his other options necessarily were in this race, but to jump back on this horse. But more importantly, found it interesting that Mike Pipey opts to protect this one in a starter allowance event. Has several options. In the last race was a state bred $50,000 claimer. Off this sort of layoff, this horse has shown ability, shown speed. It's an interesting proposition here. So I just took the fresh faces. Like I said, I could see using others in here. The other logicals just didn't do it for me, though. Oro Girl's Worth It, Va Va Boom, and we already talked about Daisy Delight.
Yeah, no, I like that you're trying to close it out with a 6-1 and an 8-1, and you make a very compelling case for the 10 horse. Pipey is very cagey, and he can bring a horse back ready. It's one of the better trainers, in my opinion, to bring a horse back off a layoff and have them run big. It's also interesting that she's a 5-year-old mare, so they must still think she can run. Otherwise, she'd be, out in the farm somewhere. So that's really, really good. So I posted the pick 5 up here. I'm gonna ask Scott to do me a favor when we're done with this, and after scratches and everything, if you can maybe tweet out your pick 5 play, and then I'll retweet it to everybody else so they could follow along. And then before I let you go, we're going to talk about race 7, because I know you have when we talked about wagering strategy, you said, you want to get involved in the multi-race sequences, but there are other opportunities on the card where you want to get involved in that specific race and try to take money out of that race, especially if you like a price horse, which you do in this one. So race 7, Calbred, $20,000 optional claimer, non-winners of 1 for fillies and mares, 5 furlongs on the turf with the rails at 12 feet. Morning line favorite, number 1, Big Summer, lukewarm 7-2. She's run well over this course, but she's been off since November of last year. I know she's got some pretty big works coming into this race, but this is a turf race, not a dirt race. So, and they work on the dirt. I thought there were a few places to land. In fact, a couple of the horses that you're using in the exact are ones that I like. So tell us how you see this race and how you're going to play it.
Well, I think there's a whole lot of speed signed on, and it's a little bit dicey in these 5 furlong turf races to count on a collapse, because we've seen so many times at this meet and in the past, one horse popped the gate by 2 lengths, the rest are chasing, and then they never look back. But we could only handicap what we could see in front of us and hope that we get a little bit of a duel here. I like number 6, Current Mood here, 8-1. Now, this horse was sprinted 3 times on the turf to start her career for Neil Drysdale, who hasn't won at the meet yet, which is a little bit of a concern. I think he's had 14 starters, maybe a couple yesterday. I don't know, but definitely a little bit of a concern that he hasn't won. But tried this horse going 2 turns last time out in her first start of the meet, and she chased a very hot pace that day, 21-4 early on, then 45-2, and backed up a little. But I think she's probably a sprinter. 5 furlongs might be a little short, but if she gets enough of a pace, I think coming out of that race, her speed will be a little bit dull. Not that she had a ton of speed in those sprints, and it's 5 furlongs, so it's not that much of an issue. But I was just looking for a horse that could finish, Frank, like we talked about, when the rails are in and the pace is hot. That can be a nice recipe at Del Mar over the turf course. And I think we should hopefully get the 8-1 price. Clearly, somebody thought this horse could run, because for a Drysdale horse to take the money it has in the first 3 starts, albeit the second one was a winning one, but was 9-1 and then bet down to 2-1. So I think this horse is a little better than what we saw last time out, and I'm hoping we can get the right trip under Drayden Van Dyke.
Yeah, and a great price on the morning line, 8-1. So in this race, you're going to do a win bet, obviously, on your price horse, and then you'll play part wheel exactas with a couple of other decent price horses in this race. Do you want to mention any of those? Anything to give on those horses?
Yeah, just real quick, I'll throw in Opening Buzz. Could get caught up in a speed duel, but leaving Jonathan Wong out on anything right now is not.
He won 3 the other day, right?
3 Thursday, 1 Friday, and 2 yesterday. That's good. A guy that struggled a lot, to bring his form down from the Northern California, where he wins a ton of races, to Southern Cal. It seems like he's figured things out.
Yes.
Another trainer that's done the same, Andy Mathis, with the number 8, the Great Haynes. This horse coming off a layoff, but Andy, 27%. 89 start sample size off a 90-plus day layoff. And then Lady Marianne, I think, has a bright future. This daughter of Curlin to Mischief tried the sod for the first time last time. The 2 dirt races prior to that I thought were very good. Ran into a buzzsaw, 2 back, 3 back, then really crushed the field, and then showed that the turf was no issue last time. We'll need to avoid a wide trip, from the way outside there, but I think she's got some talent.
All right. Well, we got plenty of rooting interest today. We got an early pick 5 cooking. We got a single in the sequence, and then race 7. Scott's got a really good opportunity to make some money on a decent priced horse, win bet, and exactas. That wraps up this week's Best Bet seminar. I will be hosting the Sunday handicapping seminar with Carlos Ortega later today on track outside the Hacienda room at 1 p.m. Come say hi. We're going to go over the whole card. Carlos is going to give out some winners. Thanks so much to Scott Shapiro for coming on and sharing his insights with us. I really appreciate it, Scott. It's great to reconnect and talk Del Mar with you.
Awesome to chat with you, Frank. We used to get to do it every day before the races. It was good to catch up for sure. And best of luck today. Glad that you're carrying on that Sunday seminar. It was a lot of fun when I was doing it.
That's right. You used to host it. So, yes, that's
Handed
awesome.
the baton. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, as I always like to say, good luck to us, and let's make some money. See everybody next week. Thanks for watching.